all set.
I'm going to open the public forum. At this time, the public is permitted to address the city council on items not appearing on the agenda. Comments may not exceed 5 minutes. In accordance with state law, however, no action or discussion may take place on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. The city council may respond to statements made or questions asked, or may request staff to report back at a future meeting on the matter. Would anyone care to comment on an item not on the agenda?
Mike Kirkley, 172 Badger Street. I kind of wanted to find out what the status is with the compliance of the 2 wrecking yards in Sutter Creek. The other day when I was traveling about on my motorcycle, I noticed that another vehicle was brought into the one off Old Amador Road on a trailer, that there's more vehicles coming in. I haven't seen any leave, and maybe you can give an update on that or some kind of status of where we're at with the compliance. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Anyone else have a comment not on the agenda? Okay. That takes us to the city manager's report, Tom.
Yep. Good evening, council. Just a quick update. I will have to get an update on code enforcement. We have been working on those junkyards, and I don't have the latest information, but I'll get that as Mr. Kirkley requested. Just some updates, looking at our city priorities. In terms of roadways, I'd say we're still looking for applicants to the local tax oversight committee. So if anybody's interested, please send me your name. We're looking for a group of 5 people that want to participate on that. Time commitment is fairly limited. And then ACTC is starting up its process to request updates for road projects. And it'll go over several months until I think August 1st, but we'll be working with our engineering team to update our road projects. In terms of the budget, again, we're continuing to work on this integration of a new financial system. Mason's done a lot of work on the utility billing side. So again, we expect it to take probably till July 1st to be complete, but we continue to make good progress there. And then in terms of the audit, I think almost all the heavy lifting is done. We're down to last few questions, so we should be getting a draft of the audit pretty soon. And then a lot of work's been going on the wastewater side. Our final individual water balance was submitted to the water board on February 28th. The next step is to work with ION and CDCR on a joint water balance, and that's already underway. Dan LaFontaine and I attended a progressive design build class just to learn kind of more details about that kind of project. And we've been meeting with wastewater treatment plant construction companies, and we have several visits scheduled. This one is a package MBR plant that we're going to go see on Wednesday. But you see those kind of trailers, those are complete wastewater treatment plants and kind of modules. And you can add more modules as your need increases.
Where is that, Tom?
It's a place called Chicken Ranch. Do you know where that is?
Oh, down
Jamestown.
by James.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Sonora.
Now, in terms of economic development, we have our grant application into Sierra Jobs First. I don't remember if I told you guys, they got so many applicants, they kind of changed their awards process. There was supposed to be a second round of pitching, and they basically are just reviewing all the applications, and they're going to select participants. So we're waiting to hear what happens there. So on the agenda later tonight is a preview of the Gold Rush. We're near complete on that application. We've been working on a local hazard mitigation plan with the county. And then also Michael Rock is here tonight. We've been meeting on use of development impact fees and kind of discussion of a process for dispersing some of those fees to the cities for parks projects. And then it took a while, but I wanted to highlight that the cemetery repairs are complete. This wall in the first picture had completely collapsed, and actually the quality of the construction is quite nice. So good. And then in terms of upcoming events, the Foundry is having a fundraising dinner coming up on March 15th. Behind the Cellar Doors happening March 22nd. And then there's the Earth Day 5K race. And then we keep saying it until April 26th, but the duck race is back. So that's coming up. And then in terms of your agendas, next council meeting, we'll be going over the long range financial forecast. It's kind of a lead into getting to our budget. We are also retaining Hydroscience as our wastewater engineering firm, so there'll be their contract on the agenda. And then future meetings, we're looking at a weed abatement ordinance, a discussion about an empty storefront ordinance, the RFQ for the wastewater plant, and we have a couple of big RFPs, one for the wastewater collection system repairs, so fixing the I&I problem, and then also the Henderson Dam repair. And then the draft budget will be coming up.
Hey, Tom?
Yeah.
Fixing the I&I, did you always anticipate doing an RFP and bringing somebody else in to help do that?
Yeah, so if you remember, we did that pipe busting project last year.
Right, yeah.
It'll be those kinds of projects.
Oh, okay.
where a firm will come in.
Great, thank you.
And then just a heads up, we may cancel the May 5th meeting unless there's a really critical item, because I'm going to be out of town on that Monday. And that's my update.
Council, did you have any questions for Tom? Okay. The public have any questions at this point? You want to get into the rest of the agenda? Okay. Mason, is Mary? Okay. We're going to go ahead and skip item A, the proclamation for Mary Ann, until she's able to attend the meeting, and go to item B, a presentation from Michael Rock at ACRA. Michael?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Michael Rock, General Manager for Amador County Recreation Agency, and I try to get around to all the cities who are members of ACRA at least once a year to update you on the activities of our recreation and park programming. As Tom mentioned, there's now a considerable fund for development impact fee type projects. The Technical Advisory Committee has met twice, and we will make recommendations to the ACRA board and ultimately to the Board of Supervisors for the old Nexus money, which is money that's been sitting around for a long time. That is for development impact fee type projects, new parks, and new recreational activities or facilities that meet the definition of the impact of development for newer areas and growth. So we're working on both the old Nexus and the new Nexus impact fee funds, which total about $1.6 million that has to be then split amongst all the cities and the county. So that's in progress, and eventually Sutter Creek will have a project that comes out of that money. The 49er run in Amador City is May 3rd for anybody interested in the 5K or the 10K run. And then in terms of our youth programming, our spring camp starts on March 10th at Amador High School for K through 6th graders. We are doing a little bit different enrichment type programming. We're doing project-based and some academic-based programming. We are not babysitting the kids anymore. That doesn't work. They get bored, and we need to keep them busy every second of every day. So we are revamping our curriculum. We also have a summer fun days for 8 weeks, also at Amador High School, for the same age group, K-6, including the swimming pool and field trips, and again, enrichment programming, and project-based learning. And we're really looking forward to changing the way we've done that summer program. We still have our after-school program here in Sutter Creek at the elementary school campus through the end of the school year. And we have added a bunch of new programming for kids and adults. We have added a ceramics class for kids that are 10 years or older in Jackson and in Plymouth. These are 4-week sessions, also open to all children in Amador County. We've also added a kids kickboxing class in Jackson starting April 14th. And we've resurrected our swim lesson program. So this coming summer, we will offer swim lessons, both group swim lessons, 1 week, or group swim lessons for 2 weeks. We'll also offer private lessons and parent and taught class for 2 weeks. So that's a new thing in the sense that we were not able to do it the last couple of years, and that is coming back. On the adult programming side, we now have a men's basketball league. It's quite a few teams. It's also at Amador High School. We have a watercolor class, March 6th, 13th, 20th, and 27th. It's in Sutter Creek. We have a cooking class, which has been extremely popular, which is in Sutter Creek at the old historic school. Yeah. And we do offer pickleball every Sunday in Jackson and every Friday in Amador City. We also have bingo in Jackson and in Pioneer and in Ione. And we are open to any other new programming that residents would like. Please call or email us so that we can constantly review and update both the youth and adult programming. So that's my report for tonight, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Hi, Michael, thank you for being here. I had one question on the allocation of the impact fees.
Yes.
Is there an existing process how that's handled, or do you have to come up with that every time?
Well, yes and no. So there's an exact amount of money that is put into the fund for each part of the county. So in other words, if someone is charged a development impact fee in Dry Town, it's a very specific area, it will be tallied in under Dry Town. If that project happened in Sutter Creek, we know exactly how much money was paid by Sutter Creek Properties into that fund. The difficulty comes in where the projects may be and how much those projects are. So matching dollar for dollar where the money went in versus where the projects are is the reason for the Technical Advisory Committee and the Board of Directors of ACRA and the County Board of Supervisors and the City Councils. So ultimately, it becomes a policy decision for the elected officials at the end of the day. The TAC is organized to make those recommendations to those governing bodies so that, but yes, there's going to be some horse trading, if you will, because it depends on the cost and scope of every project, but it also depends on, you have to meet the legal definition of spending the money. There has to be an impact that creates the necessity to like make a building bigger or to build a brand new park or whatever the case may be. So the law is very specific and very unyielding when it comes to how you spend the money. So we have to come up with projects that meet the definition of the law to the T. And that's not always that easy in areas where there's very little development. So that's the challenge. The development in the county is in Ione, and it's in scattered areas of the county. And that's where theoretically the development impact fee money should go, because that's where the most impact is to those communities of new residences and new commercial activity.
Thank you.
I have a question, and maybe we'll be talking about this at our next meeting, Michael, but the old Nexus fees, is that, were those established differently than their new fees? Is
Yeah,
there-
they
and
were, yes.
Is there a timeline for
Yes.
those old Nexus fees to be spent?
Well, yeah, we need to spend them like now. They were created before ACRA existed. So prior to 2003, the county collected the fees on behalf of everybody else. And after 2003, ACRA collected the fees for Parks and Recreation Development Impact fees. So the old Nexus is prior to ACRA, and the new Nexus, all that money goes directly to ACRA.
Okay, thank you.
Did anyone in the public have a question for Mr. Rock? Okay, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We have two sets of minutes to approve, both on February 18th. Probably ought to take them, well, we'll see if there's no edits, we can go ahead and take them at the same time.
I'd like one correction on the first meeting, the priorities meeting, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
It's on page 9. It says that when I discussed looking at the trend of police department costs close to 50 to 60% of the general fund, actually, in my numbers that I use, that should be 60 to 65%. The 45% was from information from 2021. So, and the 60 to 65% is the 2024.
Got that, Tom?
Yep. Got that.
Right.
Anybody else?
Just for the record, Claire, I did send Tom some modifications. And he's,
Just typos.
I want-
Ju- Just one very minor, maybe you already covered it, the vote to approve on the second set of minutes on number 6, on the vote to approve the council meetings of February 3rd, that vote was 304, not 40, 302, not 402, just minor.
Thank you.
If nothing else, I'll hear a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
hi.
Aye.
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 Sorry, who was the second?
Julia? Okay. We've got 2 items on our consent agenda. It's already been
Want to
in,
do the minutes from,
oh, I think we did them both.
well, I
We
can vote
combined it.
on one, but I can't vote on the other because I didn't attend.
Oh.
Second.
Okay, scratch that. That last vote, Tom, was on the
All right,
special
then
meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting.
A second.
Oh, it's the second meeting? Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the second meeting.
And I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose and 1 abstention. That's Julia. Okay, takes us to item 7, the consent agenda. It's already been indicated that we're going to pull B. Would anyone care to make a motion to approve item A on consent?
Sorry, who's pulling B?
Combo, I think Dan, Julia, and I so far.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve 7A on the consent agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
7B is the updated pool management agreement. So I don't know,
So
I have,
You guys can pull it, but what if we hear it at the end after the other three items?
yeah, I was going to suggest that, or even at a future meeting. I think we have a lot of questions on it too, so maybe we can submit our questions and bring it back.
Well, let's see what time it is, and then you guys can make a motion to continue it later.
Okay.
So we're going to remove it from the consent agenda and maybe hear it later. That takes us to 9, the administrative agenda and a joint session with the planning commission and the council. So if the planning commission wants to come up and sit next to us for this part. Tom, did you want to say anything first?
No, I mean, I think it's a good practice to try to do this once a year. But it's really for you guys to have a conversation with each other.
Okay. We did do this a couple years ago. Mike and Jim and Julia and I might have been the only ones here for that. And it was when we were going over updates to the zoning code, and that item in that instance didn't go very far. But when we all had a discussion, I felt like a lot of consensus came out of it. And I think it is a good exercise. Both bodies can kind of guide how this goes. I had a couple of thoughts. I did want to quickly go over the city priorities that the council and the staff has approved last month. I believe you're probably all familiar with that. That's to develop a comprehensive plan to maintain and improve the roadways and execute against it. So we've recently approved our CIP that, of course, is a giant catalog of road improvements, but at least we have something that we could start off of. We passed Measure P, so we have some revenue to start to spend towards roads. The council is very committed to spending that Measure P money on road improvements, but it's going to continue to be a priority for us. We have to identify how we're going to decide which roads are fixed. We have some decisions to make, big roads or more small roads first, how to do it completely, get grants. So it's still in process. Item 2, or priority 2, was to run the city with a sustainable budget, considering revenue generation and cost cutting. Of course, we're always still working on that. Measure P is going to impact that, but also the city finance department has gone through and we've initiated a new ERP, I think it's called, to update our budgeting, our whole financial system. It's going to be easier to track and, improve the accountability on where we're spending our money. Item 3 is the address our wastewater treatment needs. That never goes away here. All I'll say about that is it's not necessarily in the planning commission's purview, but it's always on the minds of everyone in Sutter Creek. And last month, Dan LaFontaine did a great update for us on where we are on that. So if you haven't seen it, I suggest that the commission looks at that. And number 4 is nurturing economic development. And that's kind of the open-ended one for all of us. That includes improving the economic opportunities for the people that live here and do business here. And that can, include bolstering our tourism, programs in our community to improve everybody's life. But it can also include developing new things, be it business, residences, new programs. So that's probably the city priority where the planning commission in my mind comes in most. Also, you guys had kind of a pre-session where you identified some of your concerns, and this is a great opportunity to go through those. There's a couple of them I just wanted to give updates. Several of you brought up the development impact fees and whether or not they were appropriate. We are in the middle of a new Nexus study, and after the Nexus study comes a review of those fees. So that will be coming to us. So I don't want to get too into the weeds on that because we're going to go there. Also, zoning updates is another thing that is in process. It fell down the list a little bit, but they are coming. And Erin can probably let us know the appropriate way for us to give her feedback on what zoning updates we'd like to be considered before we get to that point. Also, the staff has developed a TAC committee to improve the procedure of projects, any kinds of projects, proposals coming to the city. And that's where all of our different departments look at an application together rather than it pinballing around between them all, which costs the city and everybody else time and money. And it's seemed to be rather successful so far. Everybody can sit down in one room and look at something and bounce their considerations off of each other and then reply. And also, there are several programs that are required in the housing element that are yet to be implemented. And I think a lot of the things that we're all considering in our roles on our respective boards can be addressed in some of those programs. So that I think is next on the agenda or coming up here pretty soon. And hopefully you guys can stick around and see where we could be of value in that. Beyond that, I thought I'd kind of open it up and hopefully everybody can at least say something about, you know, really your primary objective in your role on whichever of these two boards you're on. So if anyone would care to start.
I'll
Go
say a
for
few
it, Dan.
words. You know, I'm happy that we're getting together to talk about with our planning partners here. I think that in Sutter Creek, in the 45 years that I've lived here, you know, meaningful, potentially viable housing projects, for instance, you know, they're few and far between. So to the extent that we can each understand our roles and our goals, and not just our goals around this table, because we're not the ones who make the decisions for the town. The people of the town make those decisions. And so what we want to do is make sure that the information, the temperature is taken of the folks who live here in terms of what is it that you believe we need and want, so that we can best do our job, providing input, of course, and move these processes along. I think that Claire mentioned we had recently developed a capital improvement plan. And when we did that work, it became pretty clear to me that there's a whole lot of stuff on that plan that unless there's some kind of development, is never going to get done. So I wouldn't say I'm pro-development or anti-development. I'm somewhere in the middle where I want to understand what's being proposed all the time, as do my colleagues around the table, but then be able to process that information professionally, quickly, so that the folks who live here today and our children and our grandchildren can enjoy this town as we've enjoyed it, you know, living here. I think when I look back in those 45 years and I see what's happened in terms of these potential developments, I'm not sure we've always done great work in that space. I think we can probably improve our processes and our ability to, I don't know, to manage these opportunities is how I see it. And I just wanted to share that. I'm glad we're having this conversation. I look forward to learning and seeing what we can do.
Thank you, Dan. Would anyone from either board care to go next?
You know,
Jim?
I'll just say I agree with a lot of things you said, Dan, appreciate it. And also take this opportunity to thank the members of our planning commission. They do a tremendous amount of work, and I don't think people realize how much work that they do. And it's a lot of technical stuff, and really do appreciate their volunteerism, and because it's a lot. Thank you.
I'd just like to express, I guess, gratitude that we can all come and we can all be at the same table. And hopefully this answers a lot of this process, or what we're about to do and where we're about to explore, will alleviate, angst of who does what, and that we're able to work together. So I'm all about, the communication, coming to the table. We all use the same language, and I'm hoping that we all come together with the same goals for our city.
Anyone from the planning commission? Come on, Mike.
I can go if not.
Go ahead, Tommy.
I just like to thank the appointment. I mean, it's been an honor. It's been a lot of fun just to learn so much about this community, and especially those technical aspects. And that's one of the main things that I like and push for as much as anything. I know a few of our other members agree. I mean, it's getting the zoning appropriate and logical as much as anything. So when you buy a piece of property, you know what it's supposed to be zoned for. And if there's a change that needs to happen, it comes before us and we kind of talk about it a little more in depth. And that's what I really enjoy doing.
Anybody else? Grab a mic. Lucy? Mike? Mike's grabbing a mic. Go, Mike.
You can see in the staff report some of my comments when we had our other meeting, and one of it was my concerns about annexations to the city. And I guess I've been around long enough and been involved with planning and general plan. I was involved in the general plan in 1990. I've been on the planning commission then, a short stint on the city council, and I think it would be very helpful for the city council and the planning commissioners, the newer planning commissioners, to really look at the inventory of what we have approved over the years. And I can summarize a little bit. We had the Powder House project. I think Pete Fox was on the planning commission with me years and years ago, and he became the proponent of that on the property, and it got approved. And then it went dormant. And then we had, obviously, Sutter, Crestview. Part was built, the other half was never built. It's in the city limits. And if you add those two together, based on what they're zoned for, you'd be surprised how many units could be built within those two projects. And then in addition to that, we have Golden Hills unit, whatever it would be, never got developed and is also in the city limits. Then when you add all those together, the city decided to annex 1,100 acres, what was the Gold Rush project. I was involved in that as a planning commissioner. And that is now an infill project. That's been annexed to the city with a lot of promises to the city. And all those promises went away. And I think that history needs to be, the people of Sutter Creek need to be aware of that history. And I think it's important as we move forward with development projects that we hold people accountable for what they're promising. And then one of my other comments were, cleaning up the zoning, and Claire says we're working on that. It was kind of frustrating. We had a grant to do some general plan update, and we had to spend the grant right away, and we couldn't get to some of these things and doing cleanup stuff. It was very frustrating because over the years you see this stuff and it never does get cleaned up. It always becomes a lower priority. And I know it's expensive to deal with that. You have to have consultants involved, but it needs to be done. And a lot of things I'm looking at is not infrastructure per se, although that plays in. And then the other one I've, over many public meetings, is tried to point out to the city council, and I know you're all aware of that, is that we get so little sale of property tax from development. A $700,000 home built tomorrow in Sutter Creek generates $280 a year in property taxes to the city. And that's about 4% of the 1% value of the home. The county gets 14%. And they want to charge us $850 a dog to hook up and take out of the city. So I think some negotiations need to go on. So I'm looking at the zoning and the economic viability. I think our general plan that I worked on many, many years ago says new development has to carry its weight. It has to be, it can't be a burden financially on the city. So I think the other thing, any new development you need to look at is community facilities districts. And I know the city is open to that, city council is open to that, and other communities have done it. There's many, that would be a good presentation to the city council at a later meeting. There's great PowerPoint presentations on that, gives you a clear idea on how to set those up and what they do for the city. But I think it's very important that you have all your ducks in a row. We've had a slow amount of development for a long period of time. You have to have your ducks in a row when they come forward with stuff. So anyway, those are my comments.
Thank you, Mike. No one else grabbing the microphone. I'll go ahead now.
That's okay.
Oh, you ready?
Yep, I was pondering, you caught me off guard. Ask that question about what is our main goal and aim, our position here. So for all of you that aren't aware, I'm the newest commissioner. This is my 5th month. So I'm still very much a novice, and I do spend a lot of time reviewing the codes. I see from my position being here is making sure that the projects that come before the commission do adhere to the community code and the plan. And then an important part is also flagging where parts of that code may be outdated or flawed. So it can be more transparent to the community and more representative of what we're hearing and getting feedback from. So that's where I stand. It's really just making sure that we can move forward and really listen to what needs to be done and what can be done for the community.
Susan?
Sure, I'll go. Well, thank you all for your service and also for the thoughtfulness in this document here. Yeah, and I really like the direction with regards to the infill. And I think we're really blessed to have a walkable town that was built before the automobile. And if we can keep it growing and retain that, I think that will be that would be a great thing as for generations to come. And with the development pressure that's already coming, and I appreciate Mike's comments on the infill and the lots that are already available that could be built up. And yeah, and Tommy, your comment on the developer accountability is really essential, because we've seen, as Mike also mentioned, a couple projects go through that weren't the benefits were on the back end, and we need to make sure that those things get done and don't just drop off after the project is almost finished. So thank you again.
I'd like to kind of reiterate what Dan and Mike both said. I think that we don't have a whole lot of really good examples before us in our city or really our county of both business and residential development and other projects um, that were done well. And Mike's absolutely right that we do need to be aware of our history and learn from our history. But things in our future cannot be held accountable to pay for our mistakes in our history. We need to be prepared. And my objective out of this is to have us be educated and empowered to ensure if there is some kind of project, and I'm not just talking about development, if there's something proposed to either of our boards and it seems to fit where it would benefit our community, it's something that the people here want, and we need to be able to take that pulse, then we need to ensure that it pays its own way, as far as any new impact on the city, and then also continues to support itself like a CFD, which I think that we're all understanding we would implement in any big future programming. But I do think that we get caught in the black and white. So in terms of annexation that Mike brought up, yeah, we do have a lot of inventory of developments that didn't happen, but they didn't happen. So if something new comes before us, the person who's bringing it owns a piece of property they have. And, something else is really irrelevant except for the fact that we can learn from those. But I do think that when we're looking through the housing element and these programs that we need to implement, that's somewhere that we may be able to spur growth towards there. What Susan said about, having a walkable city, and we're blessed to have that. We have a walkable downtown. We don't have a walkable city. I would say more than half of our residents cannot safely walk to downtown. So those are things that we need to ensure as we look at these things. But I do think overall, we all have the same objective in sitting here. I think that we're also all volunteers, and except for maybe Lucy, who's an engineer, we don't have the technical
Geologist. Very
geologist.
different to engineering.
We don't have we need the support from staff, the technical support from staff to make the best decisions. And then I also think that what I hoped to come out of here is, we can empower or ask the planning commission to give us more feedback on these proposed projects when they come back to us, rather than just yeses and nos. Tell us where the holes are, tell us where the concerns are, tell the project applicant what we need to see or would like to see or want to know before it comes back.
I just had two more things. And yeah, good point, Claire, with regards to there are neighborhoods that aren't so walkable. I meant more so the downtown and then the immediate area that is, and I would like to keep that. And then, if we were able to encourage Crestview, that second part to be developed, those houses would certainly be walkable, and to join the community or the housing that isn't that, I think that is a great imperative for us. And then one thing I just wanted to mention with regard to Commissioner Makin's observations, as far as a mix of housing types, I think that going forward, it might be beneficial for everyone to look at some projects that are a little higher density. We all know that housing is going up quickly. And I have young 20 to 30-year-old children that are wondering about their ability to buy homes at any point, and it would be great for the town to have a wider demographic and have a ability for first homes or apartments too. So that's something I think we should consider.
I just had one more thought on the, not to beat it to death, but the whole notion of annexation versus infill, because partially, it seems like it's a philosophical discussion. But, and I know we're not here to talk about specific projects during this conversation, but, you know, I'm looking for more kind of legal, technical guidance with regard to what are we obligated or not obligated to do, particularly around annexation, because on the one hand, I fully understand, Mike, what you're talking about, and others, that if we have an inventory of, you know, I'll just make it up, 100 lots scattered about, you know, that's great. And if someone comes in and has something else in mind, and it's, you know, they're not going to build one here and one here, we got to know, well, what about their property rights? You know, do they have the right for annexation? And I'm still confused by all that, and I need clarity going forward. And so Derek, part of that is to you as our city attorney, and just to kind of, you know, because it makes me scratch my head.
I would agree, Dan, that I don't believe that the existence of availability of infill lots automatically precludes the ability or the consideration of annexation.
Let me, please, Mike, please.
I think the general plan has a little preamble on that too. I mean, Aaron's a planner. I mean, the only background I have in planning, I've been a planning commissioner at the county level and the city level for a long time. But it seems to me it's good planning to not keep annexing more ground when you haven't developed what you've already done. And we're not talking hundreds. We're talking probably 2,000 available.
You mentioned Powder House. That map is gone. I mean,
No, the map's gone. The land is still in the
The land
same
is still
limits
there.
and it's zone residential.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
The map's gone. You're right. But it does have a zoning that allows you to put a kind of a density on what could be built there. And then you've got 1,000 acres at Gold Rush.
Right.
And now you're saying, well, we haven't annexed enough. Read your preamble and your general plan. Maybe you'll be enlightened a little bit on that.
Let me address this briefly. So the legal standard is you are a city council. You're not LAFCO. So we're not here, your job, and planning commissioners as well, our job here at the city government is not to decide annexation issues. But can you look at growth within your city, and can you look at whether it's wise to grow in certain areas or areas that are slated to be part of our city, that are in a sphere of influence but are not yet a part of our city? Is that within your ability to consider in a legislative capacity? Yes. You are a city council. Well, first of all, those of you who are planning commissioners will make recommendation to the council. So you will be acting in a recommending capacity, and you'll be looking at a policy question. Those of you who are on the council will be able to then make the policy determination, the legislative determination. Does this application fit with your specific plan, your general plan, your zoning? So there is an ability to look at growth and where you want to grow within the city. But I need to caution that that's not the same thing as, do we want to annex or do we not want to annex? I know I'm splitting some hairs here. That's what I do as a lawyer. So the policy question of growth, is this a good place to grow? Is this what we need at this time in the city? By all means, is something you can and should consider, but you need to make eventually you'll have to make an up or down vote, either as a recommending authority in the planning commission or as the approving authority at the council level. Do you want this or do you not? And technically, you're not deciding annexation issues as part of that.
I wanted to talk with regard to the general plan, and then thank you for that insight. And with regard to our policy, I feel like there's an imperative to keep Sutter Creek, that we would retain this identity of the small town surrounded by a rural area and not go into a suburban sprawl kind of scenario. So, and I think, Mike, would that be the general plan speaks to that?
I think it's, I haven't read it in a while. It's been updated a couple times, but I think generally it says the same thing, is that and it's got some weasel words in there. We encourage infill before we do additional annexation. And I agree, you have property owners that didn't develop. The Rancheria now owns Powder House. Jim's familiar with that project probably when it was approved, and it had open space, it had townhouse, all kinds of, unique open space areas, actually a pretty designed project. Now it's used for cattle grazing, as is most of Gold Rush, is still a cattle ranch. So you're right, you have no control over what those properties, and I know Crestview 2 is on the market, Golden Hills is on the market. You're right. Whether anybody buys them and wants to propose anything, I don't know. Even if somebody buys it and gets a tentative map, they don't have to develop it. They can get the map approved and flip it again. We've seen that too. So all I'm saying is you try to encourage infill. I think that's good planning, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't go to planning school, but it seems like that's like planning 101. Build out what you got before you start thinking about annexing things. So just keep that in mind. That's what I think about all the time.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Susan. Hopefully we can meld those. My question, and this may involve Aaron with the housing report and the housing element. On there, there's the picture in the statement in the graph that unless the Danco project gets funded and built, any additional housing that we move forward with would be in that middle income, and we would be pretty much, I don't know if the word compliance or out of compliance, or we would be violating our housing plan. Is that correct? So how far can we really discuss other than coming to an agreement of infill versus annexation? And I'm just doing a mental straw poll here, but how far can we really discuss actual projects that almost like a chicken and an egg thing?
Yeah, and unfortunately, there is the disconnect between what the state says they want a community to produce in housing units, the RENA, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. So they come out and say each county gets a number, and then it is split into the jurisdictions, and they say, you need X a number of above moderate, low income, and very low, extremely low. But cities are not in the business of building housing typically. And so it's very hard for us to control what a developer wants to do with their project. And we have an application, we have an entitlement for, 45 extremely low income units with Danco. But we don't really have many other incentives in our zoning ordinance to incentivize people to build affordable housing. Any type of additional concessions. We have a density bonus that will give you some concessions, but you're right, there may be a big gap if Danco doesn't happen.
Are there consequences? I'm just scenario, not saying that I agree with this plan or not. Are there consequences if Danco doesn't get approved and the Planning Commission and the council would move forward on approving developments that are the middle to upper middle?
So the good thing is Danco has been approved by the city, and now it's back in the developer's hands. So we have done our portion of entitling the project. Obviously, we want the developer to then build the project. But if
Why don't
I
we
thought-
talk more generally instead of the specific project? But I
So-
think the question is, what if we don't get the low income?
if we don't
Yeah.
meet our RENA numbers,
Correct.
the
Correct.
HCD could come after us. If we are showing, or if developers can Derek, maybe you can help a little bit more with this. So what for our consequences for not meeting RENA numbers?
We face action by housing and community development. I mean, there are things they can do to penalize us.
I think SB 35 could kick in.
Yeah, there are certain, rights that developers can invoke that may take away our discretion to limit or to condition or to approve their development. It's a little nebulous because we don't have anything pending. We don't have what we call builder remedy applications that you see throughout the Bay Area and Southern California. But there are consequences that if we don't provide for a housing stock.
Now, when you say don't provide, is the fact that Danco was approved, could that be considered a provision? And if the commission and council move forward on an infill development, we would still be in compliance?
Well, we can meet, we don't need this particular project that we're going to be looking at tonight necessarily to meet our housing obligations. Others can come forward. So I don't want to give the impression that we must do
No.
this, but I also, that we don't have a whole lot pending right now.
So I might have not asked clearly. So what I'm understanding from Aaron, that we have approved the Danco to move forward. Now the ball's in their court in terms of funding and moving forward.
Correct.
So if they're not moving forward, but the movement of the council and the commission is to move forward with other infill developments, any infill
Yeah.
development.
So maybe
we would
some of
be
this,
okay.
we should talk about it on the next item. But again, there's thresholds for low income, and that's defined. So very low income, low income.
Correct.
That's what Danco is. Other projects are market projects. Those don't count for the low income, right? So when you look at the HCD report, you have to look at your production by category. So does that help? We don't have any other low-income developers that are talking to the city at this point who essentially are doing subsidized housing, right?
All I want to hear is yes or no, we can still move forward with an infill project and be in compliance
Well,
with our
infill,
housing.
that's what I'm trying to tell you. Infill has nothing to do with low income or not.
No, I know.
Okay, so it wouldn't help us there. It
So-
would help us with market rate housing in terms of ones or twos for every infill lot, It would,
So the fact that we've approved it, the Danco,
no, it has to be built to count.
okay, that's what I was asking.
So yeah, we don't get credit for the approvals.
Back
That's what
to,
I was getting at.
back to the broader scope of, the two.
Hold on real
commissions.
quick. Can I just ask one thing? So what's the interplay between the legal obligations and the project funding that we don't really have control over whether or not it gets built?
I think that was what Aaron was trying to get to, that the state has trying to put teeth into these RENA requirements on cities, but cities don't do development. So we risk getting penalized for something we don't really control. Some cities are putting in all kinds of incentives to make it more and more attractive to try to make it happen. But that's kind of the disconnect in this housing element cycle.
Right.
So back to the broader objectives out of both commissions, and after hearing, what everybody's had to say, I would like to move further away from the guidelines of, whether we consider infill or annexation. I mean, there's too many black and whites. I would like to empower both of these bodies to be able to consider any project on its merits for the community. I grew up here too. And when we talked about some of these projects that had been approved, the concern was all of the hills around the bowl of the community were going to be full of houses, and we wanted to leave some of them empty. By that note, Maybe you would want to do some of this stuff up on the hill. I don't know. We need to be able to consider each one, and we need to know, to be empowered to know if they were to come in, how we don't make the mistakes of the past, how we ensure that they're paying for whatever new impact they're going to have on our community, and how to ensure that, Mike's absolutely right about property taxes, as time goes on, they continue to pay their way. And it is very vague, the developer fees had been explained to me at one point, and I think it makes sense if somebody's buying a lot in town, right? That they're basically paying in to their piece of the system that those of us who live here have already put in place. Now, if it's a larger scale development and something new is required in terms of our infrastructure to accommodate it, then, that's a different consideration. But I would like us to all know how to ensure, if we feel that something is what our community wants and needs and would benefit both the people that live here and the city itself, in terms of economics and our quality of life, how do we ensure we are covered?
Claire, I think that's a great segue perhaps to the next part of our discussion tonight, where we're going to be educating ourselves more on this potential project coming up and what the rules are and what the rules aren't. Does that make sense, or are you going in a different direction and I'm misunderstanding what you're saying?
No, I think that's what I'm saying. And I think that, I guess I'm trying to indicate to the planning commission that when you give something back to us, that's what I want to know.
Right.
And-
How it's meeting or not meeting, and
How it's meeting or not meeting our needs, benefiting, our citizens, or, and how we're going to make sure the impacts are covered immediately and in the future.
yeah.
Thank you, Claire, too, for noting the value and the importance of the open space that we have now. And I think in the general plan and then the more specifics, the zoning is important in that. And when we're looking at agriculture land, ag zone land, I think that's so much an imperative of our rural town, and the annexation, changing that, I think we should be really mindful when we're looking at zoning, because it's worked till now.
Did anyone up here have anything else to say before I open it up to the public? Anyone in the public have a comment on this joint session? And then we've got a couple more agenda items coming up. Right, that's nobody. So let's go ahead and take a 10-minute recess.
For a while. Yeah, 10 minutes. It's tax season, so I'm working until all hours of the night. William's birthday on Thursday. Yeah. Is he like walking? Oh, he's running. Oh, really? He's not even running. Not yet. He was 10 months old. Oh, geez. Yeah. Running around kicking a ball. Great. A lot of kids don't even start walking. I know. Yeah. He's not talking. He'll say like mama. Yeah. Point more. Yeah. Say it in general. He's can't even walk in his little sleep sack. Not well, but no, he's. I know. It's to let him be like when he's supposed to be sleeping. Yeah.
So he doesn't kick the covers off.
Well, I mean, so many kids apparently like suffocate themselves in blankets nowadays.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they have blankets.
Oh, okay.
So they have
That's a
like
good
these
idea.
sleep sack things. Yeah, he's a little spitfire. Go to the bathroom. I know. I said hi to him earlier. I need to go golf with him again.
You sit there for a friend. I said, she's right in the front row. Yeah.
We can, man, this is just a workshop.
Hey, how are you? I don't know. Maybe he's impressed. I'll step outside and see if he's there.
We got a long night ahead of us. If everybody can sit back down, we'll go back into session. Julia, that means you. Do you need to start the recording? Okay, that brings us to 9B on the administrative agenda, the progress report for our housing elements.
Yes, thank you. So every year, cities are required to submit an annual progress report, the APR, to both the Office of Planning and Research and the Housing and Community Development Department. It's due April 1st of each year. The report provides information to the state and the public on the implementation of the housing element and our progress towards the RENA numbers, which we were talking about at the previous discussion. So over the last year in 2024, we made some progress towards our RENA. We approved and or permitted and finalized one ADU. So the report asks for a few things. One is projects that have been entitled. So that's where we have had Danco on the list before because it has been entitled. So it's ready to be permitted. And then projects that have been denied, building permits that have been issued, and building permits that have been finalized. So in 2024, we had one building permit issued for an ADU, and it was also finalized. We also reviewed an entitlement for 10 lots, Broadmeadows, which was denied. One other thing I wanted to touch on with the RENA numbers is, so the state is most interested in the lower income units. They are not really interested if we're building above moderate housing units. And their biggest concern and where they can come after the cities is if we have constraints in place that limit or prohibit people from building these types of units. So what you'll see is many of the programs in our housing element are changes we need, or there are some, I'm sorry, it's not many, changes to zoning code or procedures that help to remove any constraints for developers who are building low-income units. So with our arena numbers, like I said, we're at 1, but we have made some progress on some of our housing element programs. And since 2024, actually, our housing element now is officially certified by the state, which is a big hurdle. But a program that we have been working on for the past year is our countywide housing working group. So the group of all the planners in the county get together every 3 months to talk about issues in the housing element, figure out ways we can collaborate and work together and make any processes smoother throughout the jurisdictions, where we can share resources, things like that. So we've talked about ADUs, water efficiency landscaping ordinance, and some growth projections for all the cities in the county. Next week, we have a meeting scheduled where we will be have someone from environmental health coming to talk to us about smoke-free multi-unit housing, which is a program in our housing element. So we are slowly checking off some of those programs, which looks good. I mean, that is what is in our control as a city, is our implementation of these programs. I think that pretty much sums up the APR for 2024. I can answer any questions we have about it, but I'm just looking for direction to go ahead and submit this to the state.
I had a thought. You know, obviously, a lot of these, I ran out of space, but a lot of these are not yet implemented, right? And so and I think I understand why. However, some of them, you indicate that they're not yet implemented, but they're going to be soon, or something like that. Is it possible within this, progress report to indicate when and what is going to happen? What is it that you know that caused you to make those kind of comments here and there, and why not include it in the progress report? The specificity I'm talking about. And I'm not sure if that's overly burdensome or helpful or whatever, but it occurred to me, so I wanted to share it.
I think with some of them, it all depends on budget and staff availability. So, I'm a contract employee. Some of my time is cost recovery from applicants, and then the other part is the city is paying out of their budget for planning staff time. So if there is something that's going to take a large amount of time,
Right.
that has to be something that's in the budget.
I guess, for instance, in number 22, it's about application and processing procedures. And it was my understanding that we are actively working on that with the new TAC and that kind of thing. So why not report that? Or did I misunderstand that one?
Let's see.
But I mean, that's a level of specificity that might be helpful and show them, more than just we're working on it.
I
Yeah.
had the same kind of comment, and I'm just going to jump in because I think we're working towards the same answer. Some of these seem like they can be implemented by the city or the staff, and some of them seem like they're going to be done by the working group, and some of them are far off down the to-do list with staff time and availability. But I agree with Dan, some of these things we can affect ourselves with policy.
Yeah. So for example, program 22, review application processing procedures in 2025 and in 2028. So this was about what we did in 2024. So.
Right, but didn't we get started on the visioning that TAC and all that stuff, or am I mistaken?
No, we did. So I guess we could add that.
I mean, it's not a huge deal, but it's something. It's something concrete. That's all I'm
Yeah. No, I
suggesting.
see what you're saying there. And I can make some of those changes where,
Yeah.
even though it doesn't have to be done until 2025, we
yeah.
can show how hard we've been working here. in
Show,
Sutter
hey,
Creek.
we're on our way. We're doing
Yes.
something. We're not just waiting until the date and then gonna report.
Yeah.
And then on the same lines, not in the report that you submit to the state, but, something from you, back to our conversation we had with Planning Commission previously, if you can indicate, which of these things can be homegrown, either done by the staff or the council or community group, or working with a community group, let us know. And, those could be objectives of the Planning Commission maybe, or the council. And then, since I'm talking, I'm going to go ahead and go back to what Julia was talking about in the last agenda item that I think relates to this one. When you're talking about what teeth the state might be putting into some of this, my head always jumps towards funding because we are and will continue to be asking the state for money, probably forever. And, you know, do they base any of their funding off of,
So,
your performance in these
So-
areas?
the last two grants that I've worked on here, well, I started them when I was in Plymouth, but have helped move them forward here too. The LEAP funding and, oh, I can't remember the other one, but their only requirement was that you do your APR. So,
And that it
I
is,
meant
yeah.
bigger funding, like when we're asking for money for the, whatever we do with the sewer or, safe routes to school, other kinds of large projects. Is this part of our report card?
so they're going to want to see that we are removing constraints from development. So they do understand since we are not the developers, we are not building the housing, but we're making it as easy as we can for these developers to come in and produce this housing.
It seems like a lot of this goes above and beyond just how many houses you're in your inventory and how many you need to have in those different categories. What is a reasonable accommodation mean?
So, so to like allow, let's see,
I'm on page 54 of our packet. It's program 15, adopt a reasonable accommodation procedure for housing. I struggle to understand what that means.
so it's to accommodate people with disabilities. So, for example, if we had a requirement, let me think of something, an example here. Let's just say it was like the setback. They couldn't meet the setbacks because they need to have an accommodation at their house, so that we would consider something like that and we would allow them that accommodation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a really case by case
Yes.
basis.
Mhm.
And as Dan mentioned, I counted 13 of the 25 programs that are not yet implemented. And you mentioned budget. What would be your best guess of the cost to implement all those? And you don't have to be specific. Is it a big number?
Well, our goal with the housing working group is that we will work together and kind of share that cost through the cities, because we all have the same programs because it's a
Mhm.
joint housing element. So it's probably not a huge number, but it's finding ways to work with other groups. Like, for example, the county health guy had reached out to me, and he has a grant, I think, for this. And I said, perfect, we have a program for you and you can help us implement it. And there we go, a free way to get this implemented through the county. And so I think I've done a lot of the legwork with the county working group. And so making sure that we can get other cities, I've had other planners in the county helping also, have done a lot of legwork, but spreading that out over all of the cities. So the city of Sutter Creek is not the only one paying the bill for working on these programs, or. Yeah.
Okay.
Does the county appear to be stepping up to their part and
Yeah.
role?
So like I said, we've only had four meetings, and we've kind of rotated who was in charge. And it's rotated mostly just between two cities. And so one of the agenda items coming up will be, how are we going to divide these programs up? And we can work, either you take 1 through 5 and come back with your ideas, and the next city, this one, and those, yeah.
I had a question here on program 16, the federal voucher program, page 57. Can you explain, so we're all more clearly aware of how the voucher program works. And from what I read, it sounds like there needs to be someone from the state that probably could come to the county and see eligibility.
So I am not very familiar with this, and we have not reached out to the Stanislaus County Regional Housing Authority to start working with us on this.
Okay, can you give a brief definition or explanation of the voucher program, or what the voucher program should be addressing and who could benefit from it?
So I haven't read this. Is this Section 8 housing? Is that what it looks like?
To determine, I believe that is what it is. Vouchers
So-
are.
So, yeah, again, it's not something we do on our own.
Yeah, I believe the vouchers are for Section 8 housing.
Which is,
It's just the part of the rent is paid by,
so it's partly subsidized.
yes.
Okay.
Implementation program.
You good?
Yeah, that's. all the
Anybody
information I
else
have
up
on it.
here before I open it to the public? The public have any comments on the housing element? The housing element annual report, the housing element's already been submitted and approved. Nope. Okay, then we need a motion to approve the progress report. Is that right, Tom?
And would you like me to add additional comments on a few of them?
I would feel better if you could do
Yes.
that, and with those additions, I would move to approve the 2024 APR.
I second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Now that's over. Everyone can go home. Nothing left to see here. That takes us to 9C, a pre-screening of 150 home project proposed in Gold Rush. Tom, do you want to start?
Yeah, so again, I just want to kind of highlight what we're doing tonight, right? So,
How about what we're doing and not doing?
what we're not doing, yes, including that. So what we're doing is a pre-screening. This is a large project for the city. You know, a pre-screening is a chance for the council and for the public to hear about a project. This is not even a complete application at this point. So the council is not making a decision. It's really a chance for you to hear about it, get some background, ask questions. Actually, the first half of what we were doing tonight is really talking about kind of the structure of what a specific plan is and a lot of definitions. It's been quite a few years since this was an active project. The original developer is gone. The development agreement with that developer is expired. And so we have a new developer that wants to propose a project under the city's current specific plan. The city council has adopted the specific plan, so that is the zoning for that part of town. And so again, tonight, council should listen, should ask questions. You should reserve making any decisions or comments so you don't have to recuse yourself. So once the project is complete, it will go through our normal process. It will go to the planning commission and we'll come back. If appealed, it would come back to you guys, I think, on the tentative map.
So I just want to say how I understand that and maybe just take a quick pause to make sure that we're all on the same page on what we're doing here tonight. So to me, what that means is because, you know, this is old and new, it's an old specific plan. There's no development agreement. There is an EIR. It's new people. My idea of being here tonight is just to see where the start line is. And, you know, then it'll follow the process from there.
I appreciate that, Claire. And I appreciate that at least the first half of this is really education on process, so to speak. And that's essential in this thing. We need to know Where are we? What is the process? What are the steps?
So why don't we go through it and then you guys can decide when you want to take public comment.
No.
It's a public meeting. You can attend as a resident. Again, we're not making any decisions tonight. Just an- I'm not sure what he's looking at.
The cover
Oh,
says,
just because I think you guys were here for the previous session. That's all. If you
okay,
wanna
so
pick it
yeah,
up.
I'm just going to go briefly over a specific plan. Like I said, or Tom said, the first part of this presentation will be kind of educational, but we will be referring at points, at times, to the Gold Rush project. So a specific plan is a planning document that implements the goals and policies of the general plan. It is detailed, it has its own zoning, it's like, its own little general plan and own little zoning ordinance for a specific area of the town. They are typically developed when it's a large, like, undeveloped area, or an area that you want to direct the growth and development in a certain way. So let's see. Oh, we already did that one. The next part of I wanted to go over is the CEQA and the EIR. So part of the entitlement, during the entitlement process, there is an environmental review. And one of the documents that can sometimes come out of an environmental review is an environmental impact report. So this specific plan project area also has a certified EIR that was reviewed and adopted by the city council when the project was originally brought forward. Things like population and housing, public service and utilities, transportation, circulation, air quality, noise, soils, hydrology and water quality, public safety and hazards, bioresources, cultural resources, visual resources, and land use was all studied in the EIR that accompanies the specific plan. So like I said, the EIR has been certified and the specific plan was adopted for this area. And if the development is consistent with what was studied in the EIR, no additional environmental review is necessary. Additional studies may be necessary, especially because the studies that went into this EIR are in some cases, 20 years old. So
Can I jump in there?
yeah.
So in terms of the CEQA part of this, because or correct me if I'm wrong, but the EIR that was done encompasses the entirety of the
Yes.
project.
Yep.
So our concerns about piecemealing would be kind of the opposite of this. Piecemealing is if you're just going to review one part at a time and not see the whole.
Yes.
So that would not be a concern in this case?
It's not. So the impacts of the entire project, the entire specific plan area were studied in the original EIR. So as long as any future development is consistent with what was studied and not creating additional impacts, the EIR stands and is the document that the Planning Commission and the City Council would use to make future decisions or entitlements on this property or in the specific plan area.
Is one of the studies that would have to be done a traffic impact study?
Yeah, so that was done, and there is mitigation measures for the traffic that would be created by a project in that area. We are asking for additional traffic studies for this new phase of the project. And there have been some changes in state law on how traffic impacts are measured and
Yeah,
since this was done too. So to look at that.
right. The most
VMT
significant
versus
being,
LOS, yeah.
vehicle miles traveled
Yeah.
versus level of service,
Yes.
which are very different things.
Mhm.
So as we go through this, when we require an additional traffic study at this point, is it based on LOS or VMT?
VMT.
It's based on VMT. And everything else sits there already based on LOS. The rest of the, you calling the project.
Yeah.
But this 150 will be looking, using vehicle miles traveled.
Yeah, because that's how we have to study impacts that
Right.
way.
So again, we're requiring updated studies to see if there were changed conditions in the period of time.
Right.
If the study indicates no change, then we stick with the existing specific plan
Yeah.
or the existing mitigations.
The part of the study that addresses public services and utilities, thinking of water and wastewater mainly, obviously that scene has changed many times since then. How, how can you even do a CEQA study on those moving parts? I mean, I would assume that would be something that would also have to be readdressed. Or would it? Am I making the wrong
So-
assumption?
So infrastructure improvements are still one of kind of our outstanding topics on this project that we are working at the city and.
I
applicant,
understand
yeah.
that, but in terms of the CEQA document, the EIR, so the utility situation in 2010,
Mhm.
mostly with water, not wastewater, is pretty different than the forecast or the outlook or the status right now. So certainly this project would have to work with AWA, but in terms of the CEQA document, would that be redone?
Well, we will review it and see what needs to change in it. So, but the other example of something that we most likely will ask for revise is the biological assessment. So in 20 years, the biology out there could have and has probably changed,
Right.
including trees. That was a big thing when the EIR was originally done, and trees change in 20 years. So we want to know what kind of changes have happened out there and how that will impact any potential development.
So just to
So again,
follow up
why
on
don't we get
Claire's,
through the definitional stuff? I think we're like diving into the project, but did you have a quick one? Or-
well, just a quick follow-up on Claire's. Aaron, you said that we'll look at that water situation, and if it's determined that something has significantly changed, then we'll study it more in depth.
Yeah.
Can you briefly explain, well, what would have had to have changed? What's the threshold to determine whether or not it's going to require a restudy or not?
Well,
Is that
again,
documented?
it's within the specific plan, so they already studied that number of homes. So from that perspective, the
That hasn't
infrastructure has already been studied for
Right.
this level of development.
Right, but to Claire's point,
Yep.
the overall water situation perhaps has changed.
So if the
So from an-
CEQA, the EIR said what the water needs usage impact will be on this whole project. In 2010, we weren't in a situation where the water agency had little to no hookups to give. How do those two things meet? Current day, needs and our
Ability to provide.
status.
So they'll still have to go through the same process with AWA and submit their application and get conditional will serves and will serve letters. Whether AWA is going to be able to give those, that,
Okay.
But that has nothing to do with CEQA, is my question.
yeah.
Okay.
So what you would see then is a condition of approval that
Okay.
says, get your will serve from
Gotcha.
AWA.
All right.
And how they can do that. So
Gotcha.
next, we're going to move on to development agreements. So a development agreement is a contract between a developer or an applicant in the city that locks in regulations, policies, and compensations for a project. So it has both developers' responsibilities and the city's responsibilities. And it provides some certainty for developers on projects. And it also lays out a schedule of dates and obligations. So a DA is not required for development projects. And developers sometimes ask for them, or sometimes they do not. So
Does the city ever ask for it?
I would assume yes, that a city would ask a developer to enter into a development agreement on certain projects.
They're agreements. They're not required, so that's usually a negotiation between the parties. Often in my experience with my other cities, the development agreement is something that allows for sort of long-term, very long-term preservation of rights. So you have, sometimes 20 and 25-year development agreements where you have large master plan communities.
Mhm.
That's not what these proponents are at this time proposing. They're scaling back. So in my experience, 150 units is a lot for us, but it's not, in general California development, it's not a lot. So to me, seeing a development agreement for 150 units wouldn't be normal.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I'm not saying you can't find it, but in my opinion, I understand why they're not asking for that here.
Okay. And we don't have to do this now, but I'd like to hear more about the pros and cons of that kind of development agreement, if we can, table that. And because it says right here that it often lays out schedules and dates and obligations. Those seem like important things, even for 150 homes in Sutter Creek. So,
If all you're going to do is just do what your map says and you're going to do it in a couple of years, ordinarily you wouldn't ask for development agreement.
okay. All right. Well, this is education, so I appreciate it.
I guess the other thing is, a specific plan is for a part of town.
Right.
Could be multiple property owners. Specifically, a development agreement is for when one property owner owns a large piece. And like Derek said, it may go on for a number of years with a number of benefits and things happening at different points in time. So again, I think as we get into the specifics, a lot of those are captured in the specific plan.
Stay tuned. Thank
So
you.
next, the planning commission and the council's role in reviewing a specific plan. Again, the specific plan is the document that has all your programs, your policies, your goals, and your zoning ordinance information in it. So when reviewing it, you're reviewing it against the specific plan, not the general plan or the rest of the city's zoning ordinance, because it has its own unique requirements to that. And that any changes of the zoning or what is it, if they are asking for a variance from the specific plan, or if they want to change from that, they would need to amend the specific plan. So. Okay, any questions on kind of the background portion of this presentation? Because next we'll move into
What's the procedure for amending the specific plan?
it's the same as amending the general plan. So it would be planning commission at the city, and then the city council is the approval authority of the amendment. Okay, are we ready to move into the?
Did the public have any questions on the background education side of this? Council? Go ahead, Aaron.
Okay, so tonight we're going to be talking about the Gold Rush Ranch specific plan, which was originally approved by the city in 2010. The EIR was completed in 2009. The developers and the city entered into a development agreement, which has since expired in 2019. Like Tom mentioned, the ownership of the property has changed. In about 2022, the applicant began discussing options to develop the housing and the golf course. And then really in 2024, the applicant submitted the application that we're kind of going to look at tonight, which is phase 1A, which is 150 homes, some of the infrastructure, a neighborhood park, and a community park. So phase 1A, which is a portion of Village B.
I'm sorry, I got to stop you because I had a question on the second to the last bullet on the previous slide. It says that in 2023, the applicant initially submitted an application for a new specific plan, then withdrew it.
Yes.
What was changed in the specific plan? Why was it withdrawn?
So I think what the applicant and the city had been going back and forth for a few years regarding how they wanted to move forward, and how they didn't think that they could move forward with what the existing specific plan said. So they wanted to change the phasing around. So they brought they thought they would do a new specific plan instead of amending the old one. I think that is what the city previously had wanted them to do, was amend the old specific plan. So they brought this new specific plan And at the same time, we're talking to us about this phase 1A option also. So the new specific plan really is not too different than the old specific plan. It was still kind of staff's opinion that they should really spend the time to amend the old specific plan instead of doing a new one, because that would remove it. It's amendment to the general plan. It takes that specific plan away. It also gets rid of that EIR that we have, and it starts the process over again. So that's why I think this, moving forward with this phase 1A or the existing specific plan is
Aaron, and excuse me, specifically, what was it?
there wasn't really much difference.
Well, there had to be something different.
So they were asking for less housing units.
Okay, fewer than the 150?
Yes, and the golf course was not in the exact same layout. And the developer team is here, and
I don't think there's a golf course included in this.
No, so again.
but mostly the phasing, less housing units, and a slight reconfiguration of the golf course.
Right, so we're talking about the entire specific plan, nothing to do with this.
Not
Yes.
not the
first phase.
150.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. I was confused.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry
Okay,
about that.
but just to go back there and to clarify, so the discussion with the city and the developers from 2000 onwards was with the city staff and the developers. None of this has come to planning commission. None of this is coming to city council. None of this has been a complete application,
No.
right? So we've been down this road before and somewhat recently where the city had suggested a developer either start from scratch or not, or add on, or go back to the beginning. And, I guess I'd hope at some point for some more explanation on why this is the best way to go for the city right now.
Well, it's the application we have in front of us.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, that's,
But we've been giving feedback all along on what we thought they should do, which, was this, and then we suggested something else, and then now we're back to this. So,
I guess, again, we're giving them options, and they would go think about it, and then they decided to submit this project.
So overview of phase 1A, it's a tentative subdivision map. They're asking for 150 residential lots varying in size from 5,000 to 17,000 square feet with the average lot size of 6,900 square feet. They have a neighborhood park, which is a little over an acre, which meets what the specific plan requires. The dedication of a community park.
Wait,
Yeah.
it
You said
says
a little over an
0.59
acre?
acres.
I'm sorry, a little over an acre. Or a
Well,
little
you-
under, I'm sorry, a little over half acre.
Half an acre, okay.
Sorry. I was looking at 17 acres below. And so the dedication of the community park, which is 17 acres, extension of Valley View to Highway 104, water, wastewater, and sewer improvements. They're proposing to remove 13.3 acres of tree canopy, but they will be there's a street tree program in the specific plan and tree replacement on, for single family lots. Each one is required to have a tree. And then there is a retention plan in the specific plan regarding what must be saved and mitigated, for the tree removals.
what does
And-
a 17-acre community park dedication mean? Just that somewhere 17 acres one day will be a park,
So you-
or?
That's what they're showing right there of where the 17-acre community park will be. So they are not
Where?
at the
the bottom.
the
The bo-
green
the bo-
blob.
So does dedication mean there will be public access,
There will not be public improvements
It
at
will
this
be
time.
given to the city.
Yeah,
but there will be okay.
yeah, but not,
It won't be built.
won't be built.
And then it would be on the city to build it out? It's just given the property to the city for a park?
Again, I think as part of our conditions of approvals, we'd probably talk about some improvements.
Yeah.
But this is mainly a open space kind of park. So again, just to be clear, this is essentially half of what was called Village B in the specific plan. So if you're looking at the specific plan, look for Village B. And it's limited to 150 because that's the capacity we have in the wastewater plant.
I have a question with regard to the original specific plan. Were there walking trails in it?
Yes.
Okay,
s-
so,
8 miles or so.
and then, so when we, with this amendment, those are no longer included?
They are, no, no. I mean, the majority of them, I think, were through the golf course. They're not in phase 1A. There are sidewalks.
Just to be clear, is there an amendment to this specific plan?
No.
No, because you just, there's no
No,
amendment.
they are in the specific plan. They are around the golf course area, which is not being developed yet.
Okay, so then I'm confused. So there was an approved specific plan.
Yes, in 2010, this Gold Rush Ranch specific plan was approved.
Okay, got that. And then, so what's being filed? I thought,
So they are filing they have filed an application that they are saying is consistent with this Gold Rush Ranch specific plan, the 2010 plan. One of the things that we had talked, the city had gone back and forth with them about is phasing in the specific plan. It's not the original specific plan. It is the specific plan. And I'll get to that in 2 slides. Phase 1 had a lot. It had this whole village B, which I think was 300 houses, and the golf course and parks and things like that. So let me cover this slide and then we'll get to that. So this
Okay,
is,
thanks.
you can see in that, the gray part and up there is shows where phase 1A is in respect to the whole plan. So, and the
Sorry,
community
one more
park.
question. So the old specific plan, was it in phases or was it all in one?
It was in phases. I believe there was 4 phases.
Okay.
So let's go to the next slide, and that's going to show what the original phase 1 was, which is the parkways, the roads, the golf and clubhouse, the 8.4 miles of trails, commercial uses. So community park, which they're doing in phase 1A, are dedicating vacation homes and hotel, CFD, and then the water treatment plant. So wastewater, sorry, thanks, Matt. So you can see what they're keeping in phase 1, what they're proposing in phase 1, and what they are saying they will do in phase 1B.
So the community park is phase 1A.
The dedication of it, yes.
And that's what we just referred to, that was going to be given, just committed back
Yes.
to the city.
Yes.
So the 8.4 mile of trails, phase 1B.
Yes.
So phase 1B will take those 8.4 miles of trails and now they would be potentially developed.
Yes. So because a lot of the trails are around the golf course, that's why they are asking to move that to this phase 1B, because that is when the golf course will be developed.
And then,
Although those are two, well, I'll just stop there.
So this is the area of what used to be phase B of phase 1. It's much, much larger area.
The green, the bright green on the map.
Yep.
Used to be, is in the specific plan listed out as phase 1.
but even though this is very different than that, it still falls under the same specific plan.
So it's different as in they've broken it into a phase 1A and a phase 1B.
Okay, so it's the
Maybe Derek,
timing
you
more.
could touch on phasing maybe a little
Yeah.
bit.
I'm sorry, you want me to touch on?
Phasing and how it is consistent with the specific plan of phase 1A and a phase 1B.
Correct. The idea here is that they don't have the resources or at this stage, it's many years on, to do the full phased plan that was originally called for. So they've scaled it back substantially. And what they're doing is just a small part. They're just doing a phase. So it's really like taking, I'm just using a number, 10% of the project that they got entitled back in 2010, and they're just going to do 10% of the project. And it's just the project that's literally closest to city limits. So I mean, so the question really is, you know, is this consistent with the specific plan? Because it's not 100% of what is being done, but they still have to demonstrate compliance with the standards in the specific plan. So what we have to do is make a determination, is this 10%? That's my number. Please don't, hold me. I'm just using that for sake of explanation. Is this 10% that they're doing consistent with the specific plan? Staff is working with the applicant, the developer now, to bring something forward. And we're trying, obviously, they want to bring something forward. They want to develop something. We want to work with them to present something to you for you to decide in your discretion. And so the three of us sit here, we're working through these issues ourselves. So I just want to emphasize tonight, we don't have the full answers to all your questions. The purpose of tonight really was to give you an opportunity. We've been working on this for a couple of years, and Aaron and Tom in particular have been working on it pretty nonstop for the past several months. So the idea here is we wanted to daylight this, but please understand that we don't, at this stage, we're still working through to get this complete and to work with the developer and actually get it in a place where we can bring it to hearing bodies.
So like I explained about what kind of the planning commission will do is they will have to review this project and determine if it's consistent with the specific plan. And there is a phasing plan in the specific plan, and there's a grading plan, and there's a tree retention plan, and there is a circulation plan and all those things. So they will have to look at all of that and say, yes, it is, or no, it is not consistent with the specific plan.
And one thing I'll add the legal weeds, get in the weeds legally. There's a body of court cases that talk about when there is a determination or an interpretation of the specific plan, the body that ultimately approved that plan is given deference. So what that means is that you are the city council, your previous city council adopted the specific plan, so you will be given some deference in how you interpret that. Now, deference doesn't mean you can say night is day and day is night. It doesn't mean that you can reach unreasonable interpretations, but you do have some discretion, and as long as you make a reasonable interpretation as you apply a current situation years later to a scaled back development than what was previously approved. But again, we're talking at generalities here, so we don't have anything specific to present to you, but I do want to share the legal doctrine that you will have some discretion and some deference to any determination you make.
Well, and I think the way I understand it, that there is no old specific plan, there's no new specific plan, there's a specific
the
plan, but
specific
there's,
plan.
this application is just for this one thing. So yes, the planning commission and then our job is to determine whether or not it fits within the specific plan. But when the specific plan and the original project looked at all of it together, we have to consider whether if this project truncated still satisfies the obligations in the specific plan. So assuming, or not assuming, that's the wrong word, but let's just say this is all we ever get, we have to make sure that what is built into this part satisfies the obligations that were, understood in the whole plan. So, that I think that that's where it goes beyond just seeing if the grading and the traffic and the, whatever satisfies the original. We have to, okay.
Yeah, and then who is obligated to carry this through? Because it's my understanding that the developer will divide the lots and then sell it to a home builder. So then who's responsible for the second phase funding?
I mean, the developer. So if the developer gets approval of their tentative map, so 150 homes, and then they sell that to a home builder, then they would build those homes, but the developer would still own the rest of this property. And then, the goal would be that they start working on phase 1B, which would provide the golf course and the trails and the commercial uses, things like that.
Maybe talk through the tentative to final to building. So like in
Yeah.
the specific plan, each phase has requirements.
Yes, so let's say they have they get their tentative subdivision map approved, and that is approved by the planning commission.
Of the 100.
150 homes. With that, comes a whole list of conditions of approval. And this is the same with the like one lot subdivisions we've been seeing where people have divided their lots from one lot to two lot. They have conditions of approval. They have to meet these conditions of approval before we can sign off on the final map, and those become actual legal lots. So a condition of approval would be get AWA will serve letters, provide, do your tree mitigation, put in your infrastructure improvements, things like that. And so once that whole checklist of conditions of approval has been completed, we bring the map back to the city council, and they are the ones who approve the final map. The engineer signs off on it, the city clerk signs off on it when it's submitted to the county, and these become legal lots. And at that point, then they can, sell off individual lots, or the home builder starts building them and selling them off that way.
And then
Yes.
So just to touch on that, what Aaron said, so they could also bond for the improvements. So those conditions, if they have to put in roads and pipelines, they could put up a bond for that, to pay for that, to kind of defer the time period. And if they default, then the bond would go back to the city. City would pull the bond and take the money to go finish the project if they wish.
We would likely have what we call a subdivision improvement agreement. So they would enter into an agreement with us that would outline all of the things they have to do, and that would require, as Matt says, bonding.
Right.
And that we would have the ability to keep those bonds in place and to pull them if, and obviously we'd have to do a full review and make sure the bonding is accurate.
So that's different than the developer agreement that we talked about earlier.
A subdivision improvement agreement is once you've entitled and approved a map, that is a way to final the map without all of everything being done, because, they have to bond, they have to do all kinds of infrastructure. So that's a different thing than a development agreement. That's correct.
So we wouldn't bond them with this application to do all of the infrastructure, the requirements for, I don't even know what the total number is, 900 homes, but, say it were to be built all the way out. We would just bond for this piece, and for the benefit of the city to not force something that, the market and the conditions in the economy can't handle right now. So if we approve 150 homes and it becomes built, and we need to hang loose, or they need to hang loose for a little bit before it makes sense to go any further, they're fine to do that.
Yeah, I think, again, maybe another helpful way to think about this is, what if it was owned by multiple property owners? If you look at the specific plan, each area has a name, and each of those areas have requirements. And so if somebody owned that area, they would have to do those improvements. So, a lot of them are tied to the geography, if you will. And so, like, when the golf course is built or when the commercial district is built, there are certain standards that apply to those areas. They don't really apply to this phase. This phase is Village B, which has some specific requirements. The other thing I was going to say, well, go ahead.
We're only considering really right now phase 1A and 1B. Is that
Just 1A.
1A? So.
And you're not
Oh, I
considering
lost my
anything.
train of thought.
Yeah, exactly. We're not considering it. We're just kind of giving a preview of it. It's also,
Yes,
because
not
there are
considering.
still, when
I
we'll get into
misspoke.
them, we'll get
I
into them,
wasn't-
some of the kind of question marks still. And this is an opportunity to talk about them, and the developer can hear, because, if we continue to move forward, ask for these studies to more time, more money, and then we get to the planning commission and the planning commission says, no, we're not willing to consider that, then we've kind of wasted time and money. So to kind of get some of these issues aired out, so we can gauge maybe direction on things too.
So just, Jim, to your point, I think it's a good differentiation between the developer agreement and the subdivision agreement, improvement agreement, because the comment I made before, wanting to know more about that other, it sounds like the subdivision agreement will have all that level of detail included there, and how, and bonds and all that stuff.
And the thing I was going to say, and maybe you guys already understood this, is once we get to that final map, that's not the end of it either. The specific plan has design criteria and building criteria for actual construction of the houses, things like planting the trees. And so whoever's building will also have to comply with the specific plan.
So I'm going to go over some key considerations and start with the benefits. So this is 150 new homes to the community, and it's a housing type that we don't really have a lot of. They're smaller lots, which could potentially be more affordable. That would help towards our arena. No, these units are not going to be deed restricted as affordable units, but based on the lot size and the size of house you could put on a 5,000 square foot lot, that's obviously going to be more affordable than a half-acre lot with a bigger house. The open space and parks, the 0.59 acre neighborhood park, and then the area for the community park, and then more funds to fund the improvements of those parks. I'm going to let Tom talk about the infrastructure improvements.
Yeah, so, we're still discussing this, but the idea and the interest on the part of the developer would be to help pay for some infrastructure that would take recycled water from the treatment plant up to the property. So again, planning for a future golf course, it would provide basically disposal for the city. And again, that's just the discussion around the 150 homes. And, from my perspective, I've looked at it as, well, if the project continues, now we have a recycled water customer as more homes are developed. If we only ended up with 150 homes, we would also end up with some disposal area, which we need for our wastewater in any case. So it would help us improve our capacity. And then again, we've talked a lot about CFDs tonight. That's part of the specific plan. So
That was a question I had. So we've all been talking a lot about CFDs, and I see that it's in their application, right, to include that in 1A of Village B. But is that part of the specific plan? Is CFDs required in the?
So it is required in this specific plan. That's one of their conditions of approval, is that they create a CFD.
Does the breadth of the CFD, is that already negotiated? I'm not an expert in CFD, but I understand they could cover this much or this much or this much.
So we're still determining what would be included in the CFD, roadways, park maintenance, like median landscaping, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, lights. Okay, so key considerations, the drawbacks. So the specific plan says that phase 1 must have a minimum lot size, an average minimum lot size of 7,000 square feet. So they are proposing a minimum lot size on phase 1A of about 6,900 square feet. After the whole Village B is built out, so phase 1 and phase 1A and phase 1B, the average would be over 7,000. So this is something that I think should be considered, because in case phase 1B does not happen, you have a phase 1A that is inconsistent with your specific plan of minimum lot size.
It's not really all of phase 1B, it's the rest of Village B.
But it's,
Which is another 150.
Yeah, which is the homes in phase 1B. I don't know.
So
Be a total of 300 homes.
300 homes would average over 7,000 square feet, which is the requirement in the specific plan, but just the starting 150 is not at 7,000 square feet.
is that then where we would amend the specific plan? Because we would need to not assume
So
that the next homes would.
I don't think it requires a specific plan amendment. What it requires is an understanding that the phasing in the specific plan is being built out differently than what's actually happening.
So again, the other half of Village B would still be zoned for housing. And when it was developed, the average for Village B would have to be 7,000.
Okay, but and back to the what if, what if this is all we ever get and it's just under 7,000? And I mean, that's not a huge concern of mine, honestly, but it would not fit within the specific plan. Would that be an issue? Would we not want to just amend it?
Right. So I don't think you understand what I'm saying. The specific plan does not say that half of Village B has to be over 7,000. It says all of Village B does. So if the second half was developed 100 years later,
Right.
it would have to average 7,000 at that
Right.
point in time.
And I
So-
believe that it says if it's not over 7,000, then we can, require them to provide affordable housing. So that's something that the planning commission and the city council could think about okay, well, we're fine with it staying at 6,900 if we only get the 150, but let's figure out a way to, require them to do some affordable housing or something like that. That option is there in the specific plan. So another kind of challenge or drawback we're having right now is the grading. The specific plan identifies different grading areas, restricted, limited, and general grading where there's not additional requirements. So part of this project is in the restricted grading area. And the restricted grading area, we believe, was mapped based on tree canopy and where the trees are on the lot and obviously the topography. So land within the restricted grading area can only be graded the lots can be graded, or the grading is restricted to the driveway and the individual home site. Tree removal is limited to the individual building footprint, and it does not allow for excessive manufactured slopes. So for example, anywhere where there's more of a manufactured slope of over 8 feet high and 200 feet long, the grading would have to follow the topography of the land. So if we want to go to one of these sections, let's see, let's go to the next one. I don't have the right. And Matt, our city engineer here, can help kind of describe these grading. Matt, I don't know if you want to
We don't have that.
describe
Yeah,
this
can you go
grading.
back a slide, Aaron, please? So that vertical line, I guess it's black, kind of in the middle, and it's pointing to the right. That's the cross section A that's on the next page. So we're starting at the top of the hill, kind of working our way down from a side profile view. So the next slide, please. So you can see up at the top left, that was those upper lots, a flat pad, and then you come down for the road, and then it kind of comes up, and then you have another pad for lot, and then you cut steep slope coming down, and you kind of terrace down the hillside. You guys can't really see, but the thicker line is the proposed grading, and the other line is the existing ground that's there now. It's dashed, but it's hard to see.
So where are the roads? Like, is this a road?
Yes.
And this is a road?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And that's a road?
Yep.
So are there homes on both sides of the road or just one?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so go back a slide, please. So I have something to point, but the dark gray, those are the roads. So they're going kind of right to left. So you have lots, road, lots, slope coming down, steep slope in the backyard, lots, road, a pad. And so it's just kind of stair stepping down all the way down to that lower road. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 roads left to right there through that cross section we're looking at. So it's pretty steep backyards. And the lots are so small that the house is crammed in there. It's tight.
So then over the long term, if they're small and the house is taking up much of it, there's probably not much of a consideration that a homeowner is gonna come in after and do their own grading.
Well, they wouldn't be able to.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's something Matt and I have been working with their project engineer to get the grading plan to be more consistent with the specific plan. We do still think there's some inconsistencies there. And we do think it's very important for both planning commission, the city council, and the public to understand what these final lots will look like, that there will be steep grades in the back, there will be terracing, there will be a lot here and a lot 20 feet below it in some places on this development.
Is this property steeper than what Crestview property is?
Close, but I
Similar?
don't think that's steep.
What about that development up behind Rayleigh's over there in Jackson? You know how it terraces down? Is it consistent with something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I imagine.
Yeah, it's
Those
pretty
are-
drastic
those are
coming down.
Bigger lots though, too.
They're bigger
as well.
lots, but
Yeah.
the slope,
I
and
get it,
that
yeah.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
There's massive grading.
Yeah. So other open issues. Tom, this
Sure.
is your slide.
Yeah, so
Ma-
I think Councilmember Reardon's familiar with the first one. Yeah, sorry, Jim.
Just a quick question. And this specific plan talks about, let me see what it says. Flat padding. It says in some instances, overall flat padding of the land use area will be the preferred approach. All flat padded areas. Is that an engineering term?
What-
Padded? I
What
mean, or is it just
section of the specific plan are you
I'm-
looking at?
page grading standards?
Okay.
So flat padding is just creating a flat, huge pad, but
Yeah.
the area that I was looking, or Aaron and I were kind of diving into for this area was what was it called?
The home site,
No, the
No.
restricted,
restricted grading zone.
so the restricted grading zone talked about you could only grade for the pad or for the house pad and the driveway. And I think the way that was written is pretty open for interpretation. The way I kind of visualize it, but these lots are so small, is you try to work around the existing ground and build a pad for the home and the driveway and keep the existing kind of, but these lots are so small, you can't really make that happen.
No, there's no distance between them, really.
Yeah.
No. And another, one of the items that we will be requesting is updated tree studies out there, since this isn't a restricted grading zone and only allows tree removal for the footprint of the house and the driveway. So even if the grading extends beyond that and there's trees there, those trees have to be maintained from our understanding of the specific plan. And how are you going to do grading of a large area and maintain these existing trees?
The other question I had to the grading, in the process of the construction and all that, is is there any plan for erosion control? I mean, given the steep,
Oh, yeah, they definitely have to have all that. Yeah,
Yeah.
BMPs and everything during construction.
Yes, so there's that. There's also a schedule for tree removal. Like, you can't just go in and remove all the trees you're gonna remove at once. They have it kind of,
Bird survey.
yeah, so.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. On the original specific plan, was this area a part of, was these homes designated in
Yes.
that spot? Okay.
Yes, so that is what has been kind of a head scratcher for us, is this lot layout was what was originally proposed there. Yet there's some big challenges with this restricted grading zone.
So it seemed a little inconsistent, like
Yeah.
the restricted zone makes sense for like the much larger lots, 1 acre lots.
Yeah.
Here, I think, they are attempting to do it. You can see they're attempting to follow the contours, but like you said, the houses are so close together with, smaller setbacks.
Does the specific plan have a requirement for the ratio of the building footprint to the lot size?
It does have, yes, it does have lot coverage, and I don't know what that is off the top of my head. I'm trying to pull a specific plan out.
Maximum lot coverage?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I could find it.
So I know this meeting's going on long. Why don't we finish the last couple slides? I think, would really like your impressions, kind of areas you want to maybe have questions about. And then obviously want to hear from the public and from the developer. So a couple of open issues. We're still trying to track down some of these things. And I've talked to several people who were around at that time, still haven't really gotten a full picture on this Bowers extension improvement. RTMF funds were used, about $1.5 million. In the original development agreement, it said that would be repaid by the developer. Again, that has expired. ACTC has kept it on their books as a fund that is owed, and they actually have it listed as owed by the city of Sutter Creek. When we've asked about that, they said, oh, it's a pass through to a developer. And so, I think the feeling is there's no, at this point, we haven't been able to find any legal agreement that says it's like legally binding. but the developer has proposed, some payments over time to help, I think, smooth the process. But that's still an open item that has to go to the ACTC board. The other open item is kind of the wastewater improvements. And I kind of talked about that a little bit already. We're just talking about a pressurized pipeline and a pump station that would go from the wastewater plant. It would take treated water up to the property. And again, as a
Secondarily treated water?
whatever level our plant is at the
Okay.
time. So yeah, it would start off with secondary. The idea was if we do move to a tertiary plant, it would then already be a pipeline in place for a golf course. And so again, like I kind of explained before, kind of thinking about it in what if the development continues and a golf course exists, and what if it doesn't? Either way, trying to have something that will be useful for the city and help further our wastewater goals.
And is the developer aware of the disposal easement that the city or that ARSA has on that property?
So again, it hasn't been documented anywhere in any deed, but they're basically willing to give a new easement as part of the approval of this project.
Okay.
Yeah. Want to finish up?
So next steps, the city and the applicant will consider any comments that we hear tonight. And we're working towards a complete application that includes having other outside agencies review the application and figuring out where we need additional information and additional studies. Once we have a complete application, the tentative subdivision map will go to the Planning Commission for review at a public hearing. So notices will be sent out to neighbors within 300 feet, and including, posting on our website and the agendas and things like that, and in the newspaper. And then the Planning Commission will review the subdivision map with its consistency to the specific plan. Because the Planning Commission has the authority to approve tentative subdivision maps. And then once the conditions of the maps have been met, and we talked about how those conditions can be met, either they are done or bonds are in place, the final map would come to the City Council for approval, and which would create the lots. Yeah, that's the end of our presentation, staff's presentation. Obviously, we can answer any questions. The developer and his team are here, so they're here.
I think the council's kind of been asking them as we go. Do you all have anything to say before we open it up to the public?
I have one question, and it has to do with the state's kind of recent, talking about R1 zoning and with the idea of creating more housing. How does that law impact this, specific plan of R1 housing vis-a-vis, can they build duplexes there, and can they do an ADR and
So
that kind of stuff?
yes, they can build ADUs.
ADUs.
We were talking about this earlier, staff, and the lot is going to constrain a lot of that. Some of these lots that the house will just back right up to a steep slope.
Right.
So that would be an issue. And then like SB 9, which allows the splitting of lots. I would have to see if this is in the high fire area, because that is, you're not allowed to do SB 9 if you have a house, a lot in a fire zone.
I see.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because of density?
I think, safety, historic, like historic designated areas or zones. So, because this SB 9 has come up a few times in Planning Commission, and that there's not much area of the city that SB 9 would apply to because of our fire risk and historic designation.
How does that work when the specific plan was approved so long ago and there's new state codes?
State codes with the specific.
So
plan
SB
approved
9
so long
didn't
ago.
exist when the
Correct.
specific plan was approved. So what wins?
the legislature wins. Yeah, so
They
we
always
are a general, well, there's actually a court case pending as to whether SB 9 applies to charter cities. We are a general law city. The legislature has engrafted SB 9 and other legislation like SB 330 into the planning and zoning law. So the planning and zoning law will always apply.
So I don't remotely want to go there tonight, but as this evolves, the application and everything else, then some of the drawbacks, we're calling them, like the slope and like the inability to comply with ADUs and SB 9 and things like that, could be reason enough for the developer who owns the whole property to, modify this map, this part. And so long as it, yeah, like I said, I don't want to go there yet, but at what can that sort of thing happen? We can still expect that may happen before it comes to us. Am I correct in that? Because we're all talking about streamlining things and not wasting everybody's
you're
time and
expecting-
money, yours and theirs. And
So run that by me. What is it you want to happen before it comes to you?
I don't know what I want to happen, but I'm saying it with these setbacks drawbacks that you're discussing, and that the grading seems like a pretty big deal to me. And, the compliance with the state laws, this
Well,
might be drastically modified before it
They would
comes
be
to planning
exempt from that
commission.
state law because of the high fire zone,
Right.
correct?
And again, that's for an individual homeowner. This is a subdivision. They can't do SB 9 on all their lots and have
Yeah.
600
it's not an
houses.
SB 9 case. But what I will say is that generally, the developer puts the application forward. As long as the application is complete, we have a duty to bring that to you as a hearing body. But you as a hearing body have a right to give feedback, and, we'll go through the formal hearings. You can continue items, you can direct things. So I think what you're saying is there's a lot of issues, it sounds like, that will need to be worked out. And you're flagging some of them tonight. And I think the purpose of what we're doing tonight is to help staff identify your concerns, but also the developer, the applicant, to hear this and to daylight this. So I suspect there will be some work that goes on after this, so that by the time it is presented to a hearing body, a lot of these issues we talk about tonight will be addressed.
I'm good.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the public. Can you please state your name for the record and where you live?
Sandy Anderson. Just before this last slide came up, I think it was the one just before this, it said some of the positives for all this. And one of them that it said was it would be positive if they built it was about the water. And this water that's coming from this pipeline, it would be positive in that, see down there where it says, wastewater improvements, discussing pipeline from wastewater plant, useful if no further development occurs. Does that mean only the 150 homes?
No.
Now she's
Yes.
nodding her
Yes,
voice,
it
yes.
does. I'm sorry, yes. I was saying that we would have some disposal for wastewater after the 150 homes.
But only with the 150 homes, not at once. So there we're going to have a problem after that. And
No, wait a
useful.
minute.
No.
Wait a minute.
I think what it's saying, Sandy, is there's a benefit to the city if it stops there. And then there's a benefit to the city, further benefit to the city if it
Okay.
continues. So am I right, Tom and Aaron?
that
So
right?
what
Okay.
Tom's saying is and I think they made it clear to us that they're still working it out. But I think that
Okay, I just thought it meant that 150.
Right.
Yeah.
And the last thing, 150 homes or however many, could generate cash flow to enable the rest of the project. That means they're not doing anything about helping us build a new sewer plant, as the previous people were. Is that right?
Not in this phase, but in the future phases, that would be part of the conditions.
If they continued.
Correct,
There would be connection fees for each individual.
correct. But I think there would also be discussion about, again, the specific plan says they will build a tertiary plant, whether that was feasible or not. I think the discussion is on future phases, there would be contributions to the new wastewater plant.
And I realize that it helps us if we can get rid of our wastewater on a golf course, but I'm just going to say this, probably none of you agree with me. Golf courses continue to be a negative in the as far as natural resources are concerned, water, everything else around it, habitat, everything. And take a look at what's happening in Ione. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Sandy. To clarify, Tom, the 150 homes, the pipeline and the wastewater disposal wouldn't be on a golf course. That would just be on ag land.
Well, there would be no golf course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so.
Madam Mayor, Council, Greg Bardini with Morton Metallo, representing landowners that are here with us this evening. Appreciate your time tonight. Just wanted to respond to some of the questions that we heard. Really what we're asking for is taking what was phase one. And phase one originally, under the original specific plan, was over 500 plus or minus units. It included the golf course and a lot of things. Well, we broke it into a smaller phase to implement it. Development in 2005 was a little different than it is today. The other component of that, there's only 150 sewer hookups. So we can't build 500 homes until we work with the city to solve the sewer problem. And so this 150 units is just part of what was phase one, breaks it into a smaller component, but allows us to work with the city, get the effluent line to the property, because we can't construct the golf course without the effluent line from the wastewater treatment plant. So as we looked at the project financing moving it forward, we can get project financing for the 150 units because there's sewer hookups for those 150. We could not finance the entire phase one due to that lack of sewer hookups. The utilities we're proposing are still consistent with the original EIR. It's a matter of just evaluating. The plan has always been to help the city with the sewer and get that effluent to the property. As far as the grading and all that, there's a general grading zone that allows us to grade. It's only a portion of the 150 units that's in a restricted grading zone. So we would just work with staff. I heard your concerns on trees, but I think the solution is there. But with that, I'm available for questions, as is the ownership group.
Well, don't go far. I think there's
Yes,
gonna be
ma'am.
a lot of. Anyone else care to comment or ask a question?
Hello, Greg Baracco. I live on Eureka Street, Federal Conservancy. Just first off, wanted to clarify the size and scale of the 1B phase and how many homes that consists of. You mentioned originally phase one was 500 homes. There was also a 300 number kicked around. I just wanted to pin down how many homes are allowed under 1B, which triggers these additional.
So I believe the 1B, because we haven't seen a map, is an additional 150 homes plus the like hotel vacation rental unit. So that might have been what was included in the 500 that Greg just mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
You have that phasing map, Aaron, that had the green. So under the original specific plan, phase one included the golf course, but it also included villages A and B, which are the two north villages up on the upper right. It also included homes along the golf course in the middle, which was Village E. So what we were talking about on Village B, 150 units. The second portion of just that part of the project was another 150 units.
And that one, so that 150 homes would trigger the, in the proposal anyway, would trigger the rest of these conditions. Tertiary plant, trails, golf course, all come in at 300 homes total. Is that the idea? Yeah.
Yeah, the trails are not a 1B. A large portion are constructed with 1B, but the trails actually go all the way around the entire project. So the trails in the original specific plan came on as development goes to the west. But yes, phase 1B would include the remaining improvements in phase 1, which would be the golf course and a portion of the trails, along with those additional homes.
So I guess the other thing I'd like to raise is updating of the environmental documents. Conditions have changed substantially in the 15-year period. Two things that immediately come to mind are, of course, traffic, and I need to update the traffic studies that go into these assumptions for road improvements. And the other one is clearly water supply and the fact that AWA is rapidly approaching capacity at its Tanner treatment plant. And raises the obvious question of where the water for phase 1 would come in terms of providing treated drinking water. So what updates to, I guess, what updates to the environmental documents will be, do you anticipate as part of this?
So at this point, we are thinking a traffic analysis and biological resources is what we would like to see, what we will ask for prior to saying we have a complete application to bring forward.
And water supply?
And so when we will need AWA to review this, and they'll probably provide some comments then, and that may be one of their comments also, and something we'll look more into.
All right, thank you for your time.
Anyone else?
Al Beer, Sutter Creek. I'm trying to get a sense of size of what a 5,000 foot or a 6,000 foot lot is. And for the golfers in the group, when you drive from 5 to 6 at Castle Oaks and you see those homes as you cross the street, any sense of what those lot sizes are? And I'm looking at you because I figured you might know. But anybody? Pretty close to the same size? Okay.
You can go on maps and get those numbers.
Yeah.
I'll try to do that.
Okay. And just to clarify, at full build out, this is 800, 900. I mean, I've heard phase 1A, 150, phase 1B, 150, and then the rest of it. Is that projection?
Yeah, so I think in the specific plan, I want it's 1,100, no,
In
1334
original.
units, and they have since, they're scaling it back down to about 900 when the whole project is built out. So
Okay,
about 400 units less than what they originally were planning on doing.
thank you.
So does that
It just-
change?
Yeah, go ahead.
Does that change not matter in terms of EIR considerations and that kind of thing?
It's.
I know it's less than.
Less than,
But
less
so then it's,
impacts.
then it's a,
Yeah.
who cares kind of
Yep.
thing?
If they were going the other way, that
Right.
would be a different story.
It's not who cares, it's that the environmental impact was already studied because it's less
At a
than that.
certain level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's less than that level.
And then really, if this first project were to happen and be approved and get the map and start to be built, whatever second phase, as long as it fits within the specific plan, we really don't know. You know, it could and probably should change based on the economy and conditions and everything else. So, you know, that's all kind of theoretical, which again brings me back to wanting to make sure that if it's truncated, we're okay where it leaves us with one phase at a time. Anybody else?
did want to note that
Yeah,
former
and I
council
think
member
the
Peters
first
did
is-
provide comment at about 5 PM. And so I believe our planner received that, and so that will be,
you've all received it.
you
too.
all received that. So I just want to acknowledge you did receive written comment
In an email,
in
Around-
email.
5, let's see.
Okay, we'll check it out.
I was sitting here at 5
One,
o'clock.
two,
No, our-
three,
Our
four.
packets go out a week ahead of time, so we will include letters in the next packet. But, you know, you guys can take a look.
Dan, I don't
I don't
see
have
you on
anything.
it.
I don't have anything.
Yeah, we'll get it out for the next meeting.
Can you please use the microphone? Yeah. We're recording it and there's probably people on Zoom.
Hi, I'm Robert Lanfear Jr. and Tim Blickstaff is here as the two owners of the property. We have one of our joint property owners here, and we're excited about being in Sutter Creek. And I can tell you that some of the changes and why the application was pulled before was in concert with what the city is wanting us to do. So this application has been ongoing for about 4 years. And I can tell you the changes that the direction that it was changed from city staff, from the old city staff to the new city staff, they've been wonderful to work with. They've been absolutely a godsend. They haven't changed their minds. They've given us some suggestions. We went down that road before, and then they said, oh no, we're not going to do that, start over. And we've started over twice, and it is very expensive with the people that we employ and the staffing that we have. So we want to get this project rolling. And the first 150 is actually what you have available for the sewer hookups. And it's going to take us about 4 or 5 years to develop those first 150 lots. And by that time, with us and the city, figure out what they're going to do with that darn sewer plant and how they're going to raise the money for it. I know we're going to be partially responsible for helping with the sewer plant, but we can't do it all. Some of the numbers they were throwing around in the beginning was unbelievable. And, you know, this project can only support what it can develop. And if the costs are so high to develop the project with the sewer plant, then the project won't go forward. There's got to be a reason there. You haven't developed a lot of houses in this area because of some of the costs that are involved in doing so. But we're excited about being here. My wife is from California. She wants to move back here really bad. And I can't wait to be here. So thank you very much for tonight.
Anyone else care to comment? Okay, I'll bring it back to council if you had any.
So again, without stating absolute positions, I think we really like your impressions on phasing, on the grading. Those are probably the two biggest. If you have, you know, something you like or don't like, it'd be helpful to hear.
I just have it short and sweet. The grading is a concern just with the erosion and the density of the lots. That's a concern. So I need to get, you know, affirmation that it's not going to cause any further erosion. 2 is the tree removal. When you're talking about the number of trees and then
13 acres.
yes. How is that balanced out with the number for every 2 acres removed, 1 acre is saved?
I think for every 1 acre removed, 2 acres is saved. And I mean, they do have a lot of open space on this property. So I believe it is being mitigated there. But like I've said before, we need an updated tree plan out there to see how the grading is going to impact the actual trees that are out there, not just the canopy area, because that's what dictated the the restricted grading zones, to determine really how much they're removing, what is being removed, what can be saved.
Because when you remove a tree, you're obviously disrupting the whole area and the ground
Yes.
around it. So if you're talking about that size for that amount of tree removals. The other thing is trying to balance or justify, 40, 50, 60 plus year old oak trees, with a new tree. That's not really, for me, an easy trade-off. I would like to see some movement towards the number of trees removed, have that reduced, and be able to maintain still some canopy in the area of those trees for two reasons. One is for the shade, two is for the loss of erosion.
Yeah. So we can't really determine that with the information we have right now.
Right.
What will be there and what will be remain and what will be removed. And that's why it's something we're going to ask the applicant
Yeah.
for.
So that would be some specific information I'd be interested in.
Thank you.
Susan?
Yeah, sure. Thank you all, developer folk, for being here and for all your guys' work on this. Yeah, for sure that tree removal deeply concerns me, and we're not even thinking about 30 to 40-year-old trees. We're thinking about 100-year-old trees or 200-year-old trees. And I don't know if all of you are privy to the oak mitigation up from the bypass where I think is it Erickson Ranch now? Because exactly all of the trees that were planted died. The grading concerns me. I do like the density. I think that's great to do a smaller neighborhood and have people closer together. I think that's okay. And even maybe beneficial if it leaves more of the land open. I think taking that 8.4 miles of trails out of the first phase would be a real detriment to the community. I think that was really one of the best things that opening up that space, because we really don't have open space here. We do have the back roads, but we're trying to mitigate that already with traffic concerns. I mean, there are corners if you walk to Amador City that you could get killed at just the wrong moment. So I think taking that and putting it on the second phase would make it so it would not necessarily guaranteed it. And that would really be one of the best benefits, aside from adding more housing, which I do think that we have room for growth. And then also someone had spoken to me with regard to the development in Grass Valley and Nevada City, and those communities have become really vibrant. And they talked about one of the reasons that is because the access to the outdoors. So if we're not adding that younger demographic and incentivizing why they would want to live there, I think that would be another reason to think about opening up that land.
I've heard some of my concerns already voiced, but one thing you commented on, Susan, was you liked the idea of the density, which is in order to get that density and not remove the trees remove some trees would be very difficult. And I have some concerns about the grading, but is it possible to kind of give us some actual real visual examples of what this finished grading might look like?
Yeah, so Matt and I did spend some time kind of flying around on Google Earth, finding subdivisions that we thought might look similar. And I think if we want to come up with those, we would probably take some time to figure out their lot sizes, see if we could find the maps that were approved with the slope so that we knew it was an accurate representation.
So actually, Greg, I don't know. I mean, again, as we get to a certain phase, are renderings possible specifically to the property?
I think it would be cool, Greg, if we could get, I'm sure you guys use, he's not listening.
Okay.
Greg, I'm sure you guys use Civil 3D for grading. It would be cool to build your surface and then you can do 3D renderings kind of with Civil 3D to kind of show the.
Yeah, we can do 3D rendering. It is Civil 3D.
Okay.
Just to intervene on some of the questions, is currently based on the previous data, we are doing the tree surveys And we've estimated, based on the tree data that we do have, for this phase of the project, it was 38 trees that were being removed of the trees. And I can't remember, there's well over several hundred out there. And they're not all here. A lot of them are mainly like 8 or 12-inch breast diameter heights. Now that's based on data that's, 20 years old. But as you know, oak trees don't drastically grow. But we are having that all updated so we can tell you
Yeah.
exactly how many trees are being removed.
That's the kind of information I'd like to see.
Yeah.
Because that's not a bad ratio. Doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the reasons we're here tonight and trying to get this application deemed complete, make sure we're on the right page. Because as you can imagine, all these studies that were mentioned tonight cost a lot of money. And we do want to have at least an idea of the direction we're headed before we expend any more money than we already have.
Dan?
I don't have anything to add. I'm looking forward to more information.
Sure.
Mike Kirkley, Sutter Creek. I just had the question, is the 150 lots right on the property line? You're gonna need a fire safe plan for this. In my previous life working for CAL FIRE, you need a fire safe plan. And if you build right to the property line, you're gonna burden the landowner next to you with doing fuel reduction versus having a setback where you can manage your own fuels. So I suggest I don't want to catch the developer at the last minute to develop a fire safe plan, but ingress, egress,
Thank you.
fuel management.
And that is a requirement of the specific plan that they have a plan like that. Yes, well, thank you.
Good point, Mike. Thanks.
Yeah, and that brings up something that we should think about, because I know one of the problems with the Palisades fire in the Los Angeles, that the entire neighborhood is now gone, was that the homes had all been redone and they were so close together that the fire just went from one to the next and there was no stopping it.
I don't really have anything to add. I think I said plenty. And it, brings it back to previous discussions in this meeting about, with the planning commission and the council and what we need to consider. And, we need to make sure if each piece of this is approved, we're left whole.
Oh, if I could, I wanted to just briefly go over the concerns I heard so that the applicant hears them, make sure we have them clear so we have some direction moving forward, or some comments moving forward. So grading and tree removal are concerns from what was presented tonight.
Connected with a potential erosion.
Yes, and erosion. And that more information is needed with the tree removals also. That the higher density, the housing stock is something that is appealing to the city. And that the trails extending through the project are a benefit to phase 1A and
Correct.
maybe should not be pushed off to a later phase. And I think those were kind of the big ticket items, concerns that I heard this evening.
Lack of an indoor aquatic facility.
A high school. What, did you put down the fire safe plan, the setbacks? I think that's.
Well, so we have a requirement in the specific plan that they
Okay.
come up with the emergency preparedness plan, and the fire department will review it. And Tom pulled up this map. So you can see there is a little bit of a buffer around, well, actually, never mind. Those lot lines do go to that red project boundary line. So it is something that the fire department will be an active participant in reviewing those plans. Most likely that will be a condition of approval. So before they could get their final map, they would need to have that fire safe emergency preparedness plan in place, signed off, ready to go. Yes, so they would. The fire department, I mean, he will be helping to review and the project in general.
All right, well, thank you, council. It's a good
Yes, thank
discussion.
you.
Thank you, Aaron, for all
Okay.
your work, and
Thank
thank you for coming, for the information.
Thanks to all of you for showing up and wanting to know what's going on, and I'm sure you'll all stay involved. Okay, item 10, mayor and council member reports. Dan,
I'm okay.
Julia,
Nope.
Jim, Susan? City attorney's report? Future agenda items? Anybody?
I think Tom captured them earlier.
Okay, we don't have a closed session even though it's on here, right, Tom? Nope.
No,
I
no
don't.
items.
Okay,
Just-
we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did we do future agenda items? I missed that. Okay, I'll tell Tom.
Okay, see you tomorrow night. Corned beef and cabbage.
I know, 90 miles to the gallon, yeah. I said, well, yeah, well, sometimes she's gotten like crazy. Hey,
Wow.
you? I'm good. So we're on the air. Sometimes. Let's just do it something different. Yeah, right. So, bye.
That's also wrong.